Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Parshat V'Zot Habracha. We have made it from Breshit to V'Zot Habracha, Shiur after Shiur, week after week. Thank you so much for joining us and being part of this journey. Let's dive into it and learn 8 practical spiritual lessons from Parshat V'Zot Habracha. We start from the very beginning. V'Zot Habracha Asher Berach Moshe Ish HaElokim et Bnei Yisrael. This is the blessing that Moshe gave to the Jewish people, Lifnei Moto, before he passed away. Says the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. Nira sheit kavena katuv l'shabeach ish Elokim magadu masav. He's called a man of God. That's an unbelievable praise that Moshe Rabbeinu is given. Why is he called a man of God? What is it about him? What's the quality that makes him into a man of God? He says, Hine, the Parsha Kodemet, earlier, the previous Parsha, what did it say? It explains, as the Or HaChaim, that there was a decree that Moshe could not enter the land of Israel. He'd have to go up to Har Harim and die. Al Asher, because of what happened with the Jewish people. The Jewish people and their activity and how they acted led to Moshe's mistake, which led to him being prevented from entering the land of Israel and passing away on the eastern side of the Jordan River. Im Kain, says the Or HaChaim, Yomer HaOmer, a pooper person would think, Kizem Moshe HaIsh, Tina HaYibelibal Betato. He'd probably be angry and upset over what's happening. Asher Hayul Asiba in Bnei Yisrael. Bnei Yisrael caused his death. He says he ran after them, tried to inspire them, tried to lead them, prayed for them throughout the time of the Midbar, but because of the cheshbon that he made in terms of why he hit the rock instead of speaking to the rock, which was about the Jewish people, that led Moshe to die on the eastern side of the Jordan. The Torah calls it and says, don't think for a moment that Moshe had a negative thought about the Jewish people, even though they were ultimately the reason why he failed and is not going to the land of Israel. Not only did he not hate them, he didn't distance themselves from his heart. Even more than that, I'm going to give them bracha. Moshe Rabbeinu is the pure servant of the Jewish people. He's a leader on the highest of levels, but what is his focus? One thing and one thing only: his people. That's what matters to him. And even in this situation where the people are the cause of his death, they're the cause of him not going to Eretz Yisrael, not only does he not hate them, but the last act that Moshe does in his life is to give them bracha. That's his devotion and dedication to the people. Way back at the beginning of Moshe's story, the very first act that Moshe does in the Torah in Shemot Bet Yud Aleph is Vayihi Bayamim Ahem. Moshe Rabbeinu is growing up in the palace of Pharaoh. Vayigdal Moshe, he gets older. Vayetze Elachav Vayar Besivlotam. He went out and he saw his brothers, the Jewish people, suffering. The Farshim say the first act that a person does in the Torah captures and defines exactly what that person is all about. Moshe was about caring for the Jewish people. And the very last act he does is not be angry with them and hate them because they ultimately led to his death, but rather his love for them and his willingness to give them a bracha before he passes away. That's a lesson in leadership. Moshe Rabbeinu is teaching us a leader cannot be in a position where they're thinking about themselves. This is not for the glory of the leader. It's not for the heritage, for the history of the leader. It's not for the honor of the leader. It's for the people. And Moshe Rabbeinu, and also for rabbinic leadership, as the rabbi, as the teacher, it's all about the students. It's all about the congregation. It's all about the people. I'll add to that, in a family, it's all about the kids. It's all about the people that you are leading. Lesson number 1, leadership is about caring about the people you are leading and not about caring about yourself. Lesson number 2, Dvarim Lamed Gimel Bet, Vayomer Hashem Misinai Ba, Mizarach Meseir Lamo, Hofia Mehar Paran. Rashi says, Shepasach Livnei Seir. What does this mean in this pasuk? That first Hashem went to the children of Esav. They didn't want the Torah. And then Har Paran, he says he went to Bnei Ishmael, and they didn't want the Torah. Why is this mentioned here in Moshe's final words to the people? Says the Ramban, Ki hayazchut liYisrael gedola. It was a big merit for the Jewish people, kasher lo ratzu shara umot lekabel Torah, that none of the other nations would want the Torah, but the Zerah shel Abraham, he says, the other ones are also Zerah of Abraham, but the only of the Zerah of Abraham that wanted it was Bnei Yisrael, Zulati Yisrael. And he says that is a praise that Moshe is giving the Jewish people. He's saying, you are a really special people. You accepted the Torah. You received the Torah. You are a remarkable, remarkable people. And why is Moshe saying this now? Moshe is about to give his brachot, which are officially called blessings, but there's a lot of musar. He is chastising the Jewish people and some of the Shvatim as well during those last blessings. But we know that if you want to be successful in giving musar or inspiring someone, you must praise them first. You must build them up. You must have a relationship where you're showing them how special they are. As the Gemara says in Sanhedrin Kuf Zayin Bet, Olam Tei Smol Docha V'Yamin Mekarevet. You might be pushing them away and give them a little bit of musar, but you're also bringing them closer with the Yamin. Moshe Rabbeinu over here teaches us that if you want to inspire people, if you want to touch their souls, if you want to even give them musar, rebuke, and set them on the right path, that will only be successful if you're also a person who builds them up and focuses on their positive traits. A really good teacher calls the parents to praise the child, the student, before there's a call for misbehavior. Parents have to be praising and building up their children 10 times, 100 times more than the amount of times that they give them rebuke. If you do that, then when you give the rebuke, you can be successful. Lesson number 2, learn from Moshe Rabbeinu, the ultimate teacher. Lamed Gimel Pasuk Hey, Vayihi B'Shirun Melech. God is the king over Yeshurun, over the Jewish people. B'tasef Rashi Am Yachad Shivtei Yisrael. When there is achdut, when there is unity, then God can truly be our king. So this pasuk is talking about the unity of the Jewish people. But immediately, right after this pasuk, what are we told? Yechi Ruven, V'Zot Yehuda, every single tribe individually. From here we learn very clearly that unity does not mean that we're all the same. Unity does not mean that everyone is practicing exactly the same way with the exact same philosophy and focus. No, there are 12 different tribes. Each one of them has their focus and their way. There's a basic common denominator which unites everyone together, which is halakha and observing the Torah. But then there's so much space within that for every single group or even individuals to find their own way. And from here we learn, this is lesson number 3, when we talk about unity, when we talk about the need for the Jewish people to be together, don't mistake that for conformity and everyone having to be exactly the same. It's just the opposite. The beauty comes when we have the different shvatim, we have the different ways that we serve Hashem, and we're able to respect one another despite those differences. In fact, to go even further and to celebrate those differences and recognize that each group or each person brings their unique perspective and way to the tapestry of the Jewish people. And therefore, when we talk about unity and loving other Jews, it has nothing to do with everyone doing things exactly the same way. It has everything to do with learning to respect everyone's own individual way and even recognize the greatness that there are many paths to serve Hashem and to disagree agreeably, to respect each other's ways. That is the ultimate unity, and that is what makes Hashem the Melech b'Yeshurun. Lesson number 3. Lesson number 4. Moving on to Pasuk Yud Bet. Levin Yamin Amar Yedid Hashem Yishkon Lavetach Alav. The Beit HaMikdash, the Shechina of Hashem, the Mishkan of Hashem, is going to rest ultimately in the tribe of Binyamin. Yes, it's Binyamin together with Yehuda, but ultimately the Masorah is, and by the way, ultimately it's no tribe, right? It doesn't belong to anybody, but it comes out of the land of Binyamin. The Sifri explains that there are 3 reasons why the Beit HaMikdash goes in the area that belonged to Binyamin. First of all, he was born in the land of Israel. All the other Shvatim were not. Second, he was not involved at all in the sale of Yosef. All the other tribes were. And number 3, he took care of Yaakov Avinu in his old age. Those are the three reasons, according to the Sifri, why the Beit HaMikdash is put in the land in the region of Binyamin. Says Rav Hirsch, the one whose remembrance entirely free from the slightest breath of any opposing thought correspond to the virtues that the side of the temple is dedicated to foster. Binyamin, in these three areas, stands for the Kedusha of the Beit HaMikdash, and this teaches us how we bring Kedusha into the world. First and foremost, Eretz Yisrael. Living in Eretz Yisrael, living in the land of Kedusha. That is how you bring Kedusha into your life. Number two, Achdut. He was not involved in the sale of Yosef, and therefore he was free to have the Kedusha necessary for the Beit HaMikdash. And finally, taking care of his father, Kibbud Avim, Chesed. Those are the qualities that bring Kedusha into our lives. This is lesson number 4. We can learn from the choice of Binyamin as being the host of the Beit HaMikdash. Kedusha comes from being in Eretz Yisrael. It comes from not having machloket, being unified, living a life with love towards others. And finally, number 3, living a life of chesed. You want to find a way to bring Kedusha into your life, follow the model of those 3. Moving on to lesson number 5. Perek Lamed Gimel, Pasuk Yud Chet. L'Zvulun Amar, Samach Zvulun b'teisecha, v'Yisachar ba'ohalecha. It mentions Zvulun going out. It mentions Yisachar in the tent. Says Rashi, Zvulun and Yisachar asu shvutfut. Zvulun and Yisachar made a partnership. Yisachar was going to sit and learn Torah, and Zvulun was out doing business. And they would bring in money to support not just their own shevet, but also the tribe of Yisachar. But it's interesting. Yisachar is older than Zvulun, and yet Moshe Rabbeinu mentions Zvulun first. Says Rashi, Lefika hiktim Zvulun Yisachar. Do you want to know why it says Zvulun first? Shetorato shel Yisachar al yidei Zvulun haita. The Torah of Yisachar could not have happened without Zvulun, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu mentions Zvulun first. What a lesson in terms of the value and the primacy of supporting those who learn Torah. You are placed before them because you're enabling the Torah study to take place. This is lesson number 5, to understand that are going to be those who are going to be focused exclusively on learning Torah. But we also know that the majority are not. But that majority, aside from their own learning, should use funds that they have to support those that are learning Torah. And that, on a certain level, even makes them greater than those that are learning Torah. The importance of support for those who are learning Torah. Lesson number 5. Lesson number 6. Jumping way ahead now. Perek Lamed Gimel Pasuk Chavav. Ein ke'el Yeshurun. There is none like the God in Yeshurun. The Sifri says, why is God called Yeshurun? Why is Yeshurun the terminology, that's used for the Jewish people when we say there is none like God, the highest that God can be? Over Yeshurun, Yeshurun comes from the word Yashar, being straightforward, being honest. That is, and Rav Hirsch says, nothing can compare to the manner in which God will manifest himself if the Jewish people remain true to the calling of Yeshurun, if they remain straight and upright. There is no greater midah, there is no greater trait that we can have than emet, than living our lives with truth. The Gemara says in Masechet Shabbat, and Bet, Chotamot Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu emet. The seal of God is truth, and that is something that we have to strive for, to live our lives with truth, to try to see truth as well, to not be motivated by personal aspirations and goals, but rather to try to see the truth and live our lives based on the truth, and to speak the truth, to live with truth, to be someone that people can know that they can come to for truth. That's Yeshurun, that's straight, honest, upright. Ein ke'el Yeshurun. There is nothing like the relationship that the Jewish people can have with God when they are living their lives with truth. Lesson number 6, to make sure that we recognize the value of the importance, the value of truth in our lives and in our Avodat Hashem. Moving on to lesson number 7, we jump to Perek Lamed Daled, Pasuk Hey. Vayamat Sham Moshe. Moshe dies, passes away. Eved Hashem, the servant of God. Rabbeinu Bachai says, Hine B'chayav Kara Akasa B'tchila Parsha Isha Elokim. The beginning of the Parsha, when he's alive, he's called a man of God. The Achshav V'Sofa Parsha, now at the end of the Parsha, Achar Moto. After it describes that he has passed away, Karo Eved Hashem. He's called a servant of Hashem. Mashalo Timzakein B'Kol Chumshei Torah. You will not find that terminology used anywhere in the Torah. V'ha'inyan. What is this all about? Lama'alato v'godol hasagato. This shows you what Moshe achieved during his lifetime. That after he passed away, he's an Eved Hashem. Ki ha'eved ragil etzel adanav. Eved is the highest level. The servant is with his master all the time. He can go into the inner chambers. He's always serving in front of him. Eved Hashem is the highest level there could be. And that happens at the end of Moshe's life. He passes away, and now he has achieved that closeness with Hashem, where he's bechadrei chadarim with Hashem. The Mesilat Yesharim explains in Parak Aleph, Ha'adam lo nivra el litanik al Hashem. We were created to get pleasure and joy from Hashem. Lehanot miziv shchinato, to get pleasure from the glory of His Shechina, which is the greatest enjoyment and good that there could possibly be. And the place for that, he says, is Olam Haba. But we're put here in this world first, that through the mitzvot, you can get to that place that's prepared for us, Shehu Olam Haba, Lirvod Shabbatub, to bask in the goodness there, in the glory of God, which you've acquired during your lifetime. That is what Moshe Rabbeinu did. Moshe Rabbeinu, through the way that he lived his life, reached the point where now that he passes away and he's freed from the shackles of this world, he's now free to be an Eved Hashem, the ultimate closeness that a Neshama can reach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be there, b'chadrei chadarim, so to speak, in the inner chambers with Hashem. And this is lesson number 7. Our purpose in our life is to do good, learn Torah, chesed, contribute to the world in a positive manner, and create acts of chesed for sure, be like God, and then when we pass away, our neshama is free to connect to God on the highest level. And our goal should be to leave this world as Ovdei Hashem, as those who really are living our lives day in and day out, serving Hashem on a continuous basis, being like God, doing good, contributing to the world, obviously Torah and mitzvot, and freeing our neshama to then be b'chadrei chadarim with Hashem after we pass away. Finally, lesson number 8, last pasuk of the Torah, Dvarim Perak Lamed pasuk Yud Bet. Ulachol hayad hachazaka, ulachol hamorah gadol, asher asa Moshe le'einei kol Yisrael. All the good, that great things and strengths and might that Moshe Rabbeinu did to the eyes of all the Jewish people. This is it. This is the end of the Torah. What's the final act that the Torah describes that Moshe Rabbeinu did during his lifetime? Rashi says, now those words, le'einei kol Yisrael, lishbor haluchot le'eineihem, to break the luchot in front of them. When Moshe comes down for Har Sinai, he sees the Egal HaZahav and he breaks the luchot. That's the last message that we get in the Torah. Isn't there something beautiful, wonderful, positive, inspirational that we can have at the end of the Torah? Moshe breaking the luchot, what is that all about? I think the answer is very, very clear. That the Torah is telling us in these last words, life is not going to be easy. The Torah is your guidebook for life. Life is going to be filled with challenges. Nothing will come easy. Moshe Rabbeinu has the luchot, it's the greatest moment. No, they get broken. Now we need new ones. It's much more difficult to learn Torah. There's destruction. We're distant from God. Cheda Egel. Life is about those challenges and how we deal with those challenges. Nothing is going to come easy. And that's the last message, according to Rashi, that we get in the Torah. It's the greatest way to live your life, but don't expect things to come easily. I think about the book written by Scott Peck, The Road Less Traveled, where he talks about if you wake up every single day and you expect everything to go your way, then you're going to live with constant frustration as things don't go your way. But if you wake up knowing that nothing is magieli, nothing is coming to me, I'm not expecting anything to go well. I know that the day will be filled with obstacles and challenges and things that I have to overcome. Then you free yourself to attack those challenges, to tackle them, to deal with them with the same simchat achayim that you woke up with. Because you're thankful that God gave you life. You're thankful that God gave the opportunity for growth. You're thankful that God gave you all the wonderful things that we have in our lives. And now I'm free to address the challenges because I know those challenges are going to come. And that is the message, is lesson number 8 that the Torah leaves us with. Yes, keep the Torah, believe in God. There's a lot of wonderful things that will happen, but it is going to be challenging and nothing will come easy. And once you recognize that, you're free to live a remarkable life filled with challenges, but without frustration and constant sadness over those challenges. Lesson number 8. Let's go over all the lessons that we learned from this week's Parsha. We started at the beginning. Moshe Rabbeinu had every single reason to hate the Jewish people for causing him to sin and not go into the land of Israel. But no, V'Zot Habracha. Moshe Rabbeinu rises above that. The Or HaChaim explains, and he says, I'm here for the people. My last act will have nothing to do with hate. I'm going to give them bracha. Because that's what a true leader is. A true leader is not there for themselves, but there for the people. Lesson number 2, Moshe Rabbeinu builds them up, praises them before he gives them musar, and it says, you are a wonderful people who accepted the Torah, others did not. And now he's able to give them musar, the idea of building up, praising, and then when necessary, giving them musar. Lesson number 3, by Shur Melech, the achdut of the Jewish people, but immediately we're broken up into different tribes. We're not looking for everyone being the same, accept and celebrate the differences and love everyone for who they are. That is true achdut. Lesson number 4, the Beit HaMikdash is in Binyamin for 3 reasons. These are 3 sources of Kedusha in our lives. Number 1, Eretz Yisrael, Binyamin is the only one who was born there. Number 2, Achdut, he was not involved at all in the machloket of the sale of Yosef. And number 3, Chesed, taking care of Yaakov in his old age. Those 3 tools to help us bring Kedusha into the world. Lesson number 5, Zvulun comes first, and then Yisachar, the greatness of supporting Torah and using the money that we have to support those that are learning Torah. Lesson number 6, Ein Ke'el Yeshurun. Yeshurun, the Sifri says, comes from the word Yashar, being upright, straight, and truthful. The highest level there could be, as our first points out, in terms of serving God and having a relationship with God, is when we live with truth. Because God is Chotama Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Emet. We have to live with that truth as well. Lesson number 7, Moshe dies as an Eved Hashem, the highest level there could be. The goal of our lifetime is to work to get to the point where we are b'chadrei chadarim with Hashem, where the neshama is totally free and close to Hashem, through avodat Hashem, through living our lives the best way that we can and reaching the ultimate point where we pass away. We've accomplished our mission, and now our neshama is free to be that Eved Hashem in the inner chambers with Hashem at all times. And finally, lesson number 8, the last words of the Torah, Le'inei Kol Yisrael. Rashi says, breaking the luchot, challenges, difficulty. That is the way that Hashem created the world. That's how we achieve our greatness. Once we accept that reality, we're free to accept those challenges and confront them and live our lives the best of our ability, dealing with those obstacles, still with a simchat chayim, and without a frustration of someone who's always expecting everything to go well. Bezrat Hashem, let's try to take all the lessons from this week's Parsha, from all the Torah that we've learned together, and grow in our Avodat Hashem. Thank you so much for joining us. Wishing everyone a Chag Sameach on this Simchat Torah.